Say what you want about James Wan, but the guy knows his stuff when it comes to horror movies. The Saw franchise, Insidious, The Conjuring, Annabelle, Aquaman, all of them were brought to life by this one guy. In fact, it's tough to think of anyone who's had more of an impact on horror films in the past decade. Now, I'd be lying if I said I was a big fan of the Saw movies. What started out as an interesting exploration of guilt, redemption, and sacrifice through physical suffering pretty rapidly devolved into gory torture porn for the sake of gory torture porn, but whatever. Each to their own, I guess. The point is that when the EFAP guys invited me to watch his latest movie, Malignant, with them, I was excited to join the party. Mostly because that technically qualifies me as a social drinker, but also because I was kinda curious about this movie. I didn't know much about it, but I knew it had made an impact. Maybe it was gonna buck the trend of boring, generic, low-effort Hollywood horror, and actually deliver an experience that was unique and different.
Keep happening. Whoa! What? You wrapped her neck? Mullet keeps throwing people. Oh my god.
Well, it certainly managed that. Maybe not in quite the way James Wan had intended, but it definitely entertained us. To borrow an old saying, Malignant is probably best described as a game of two halves. On the one hand, it's an intriguing, slow-paced atmospheric horror with hints of the supernatural, and on the other, it's got a stuntman with a goofy-looking CGI face attached to the back of his head, backwards fighting a bunch of time-travelling hookers from the 1970s. Damn man, this movie's fucking wild. Anyway, I guess I should try to make some kind of sense out of this, so strap yourself in, dear viewer, as we slice deep into the world of Malignant. The movie begins with a flashback to the heady days of 1993 and the world's most sinister-looking hospital. Seriously, what kind of fucking architect would design a place like this and think to themselves, nice one, people are gonna love coming here? Anyway, mad scientist lady is bitching into her video camera about one of her patients named Gabriel, who's been getting increasingly violent and dangerous recently. Then, wouldn't you know it, he goes nuts and kills a bunch of people, and all the lights start exploding until they shoot him with a fucking tranquilizer gun like he's a rampaging elephant. Flash forward to the present day, and a pregnant woman named Madison comes home from work because she's got a headache. So her husband does the sensible thing and slams her head into a fucking wall. Seriously, it's lucky the walls in American houses are made out of toilet paper or something, because if you tried this kind of shit in the UK, the movie would be over in the first 5 minutes. Believe me. Naturally, this doesn't do Madison's headache any favours, so she locks herself in the bathroom for a nice lie down. But while she's taking a nap, some asshole sneaks into the house and politely teaches her husband the finer points of anger management. Then he comes after Madison herself, and she falls over and passes out again. Fuck me, this girl spends more time unconscious than I do. Anyway, she wakes up in a hospital to find out that the pregnancy is no more and her husband is dead. Damn, talk about a bad day. So she goes home to her suspiciously huge and old-fashioned house, which genuinely confuses me because no young couple in their right minds would voluntarily decorate their home like this. Anyway, as the movie progresses, she starts having dreams about various people from her past getting murdered in gory fashion, visions which actually turn out to be real. And every time it happens, she starts bleeding from her head wound again. Could there be some kind of connection there, I wonder? Then Madison tells her sister that she was adopted as a child in a scene that fits into the narrative about as well as a vegan activist at a Texas barbecue. The point though is that Madison's hiding some kind of repressed trauma from her childhood and a connection to an imaginary friend she used to talk to. A friend named Gabriel. This all sounds very familiar. As the bodies start to pile up, the police get involved, but they're about as useful as a candy floss condom. They suspect Madison herself is behind the murders, and her situation isn't exactly helped when a missing woman literally crashes the party at her house. Now, you may be forgiven for thinking that Gabriel could be some kind of Tyler Durden situation, in which case you'd be half right, but it's only when Madison's sister breaks into the spooky nightmare hospital and finds her sister's medical records, which for some reason are still there despite the place being shut down for decades, that the movie finally gives us the truth. And what a truth it is, believe me. So it turns out that Gabriel was some kind of weird conjoined twin that was growing out of Madison's back, but as he started taking control of her body, the doctors had no choice but to surgically remove him. I love how all they really did was cut off his fucking face, stuff the rest of him inside her skull and just hope for the best. He's been kind of dormant ever since, but when Husband of the Year slammed Madison's head into that wall, I guess it must have jump-started him or something, and now he's out to take revenge. Why does he look like an evil skeleton alien? Don't know. Wouldn't a hugely invasive operation like this leave her with massive scarring down her back that would absolutely raise questions from anyone who happens to see her naked? Like her own husband? Don't know. Why wouldn't the doctors treating her head injury at the start of the movie have noticed a second brain crammed inside her skull? Don't know. Why is Gabriel able to control electricity like he's mighty Thor? Don't know. Why does he possess superhuman speed, strength and fighting ability when he's literally using the body of an average human female? Don't know. Wouldn't all these crazy contortions and unnatural movements have snapped most of the joints and tendons in Madison's body, leaving her crippled or at the very least in agonising pain after each episode? Don't know. As you can probably guess, there's quite a few unanswered questions in this movie. Anyway, the point is that Gabriel's getting stronger with every passing day. He's able to manipulate Madison into doing what he wants by conjuring up fake imageries of the world around her, and by the finale, he's able to take control of her body permanently. Although it did kind of get me wondering, what the fuck is his long-term plan here? Are you going to move out of state and make a new life for yourself? Settle down and start a career? Yeah, somehow I don't think you're gonna have much luck on Tinder, mate. I love this bit where he goes on a fucking rampage and kills everyone in sight, including an entire station full of cops. It's a bit like the police station scene from The Terminator, except those cops actually knew how to use their weapons. I don't know what you're going for there, mates. Eventually, Gabriel tracks down his birth mother and tries to kill her, along with Madison's adopted sister, and it's only the threat to her loved ones that gives her the inner strength to reassert control of her mind and banish Gabriel to a mental prison forever. Or does she? I said at the start of this review that Malignant is very much a game of two halves, and the first half is unquestionably the better one. It's got a tense, slow-paced and ominous atmosphere, a bit of mystery and intrigue, and pretty strong hints of the supernatural. But then it's like they reached the halfway point and the entire creative team died, or went on strike, or took themselves off for a weekend bender in Mexico and were never heard from again, leaving their mates to cobble together an ending in what feels like one afternoon. Honestly, if someone had told me this movie was meant to be a spoof of low-budget horror flicks, I absolutely would have believed them. The ridiculous premise is compounded by dodgy special effects that look like they were rendered on a MacBook Pro, action sequences that play out like some unholy hybrid of The Matrix and 300, and the kind of amateur hour acting that makes your average Asylum movie look like fucking Oscar baits. I swear, half of this shit looks like it was filmed against a green screen. You're just standing in a fucking room. Why do you need a green screen for that? Jesus, how did you manage to spend $40 million on this shit? There was a clear attempt to develop an antagonist that was visually interesting, because let's be honest, seeing a human body contorted into all kinds of unnatural postures and movements is a pretty effective tool in horror films. It's a neat little idea to have the antagonist functioning in reverse, fighting people, running around and interacting with the environment as this weird, distorted mirror image of a human being, even though it's clearly a male stuntman with a completely different height and build from the main actress. I'm having Taskmaster flashbacks here. It's just a shame that every other aspect of the character comes across as so contrived and simplistic, like how Gabriel chooses to wear a big leather murder suit that he made himself, because I guess the filmmakers wanted to keep his identity ambiguous, but what actual reason would he have for wearing something like this? He invests time and effort to craft his own weapon out of a surgical trophy from one of his victims because, well, irony I guess. But again, why is that more useful than a fucking kitchen knife? Why is he portrayed as a one-dimensional serial killer who just likes killing things when it would have been easy to give him a bit of depth and development, maybe even cause the viewer to question who the real villain is? I mean, being locked away inside someone else's body for your entire life would have to be the worst kind of torment imaginable, but we're never given a single insight into any of this. He could have been a tortured soul driven mad by a lifetime of imprisonment, but instead he's just a generic evil twin who's evil because, reasons. There's also a bunch of plot threads that are picked up and left totally hanging by the end, like the suggestion of a romantic attraction between Madison's sister and a police detective working the case, but then the guy gets chair-shotted and fucking vanishes from the plots. Or the forensics officer who locks herself in an evidence room and is never heard from again. Or Madison's biological mother who literally falls into the story, but never gets any kind of resolution. Is she sorry for what she did? Does she want to repair her relationship with Madison? Look at her, she's just sitting there smiling like a goofy moron because the script doesn't know what else to do with her. Much like its protagonist, Malignant feels like two wildly conflicting ideas awkwardly melded together into something that doesn't really please anyone. It's a movie with a lot of potential and an interesting central idea about the evil lurking within all of us, but unfortunately it never really lives up to either of these things. And it's a shame really, because it could have been so much more. But hey, it definitely gave me a few laughs.
Oh! Whoa! What a throw.
Anyway, that's all I've got for today. Go away now.